Next on the agenda is Sea Island Team Member Housing Rezone, considering a request for an amendment to the Old Stables Plan Development District to clarify that 4 habitable floors within a 4-story workforce housing development are allowed within the Plan Development District, PD. Property is zone PD, ZM 1754, and located at 651 Sea Island Road, St. Simons Island, parcel 04150007. Chris Jordan, Hunter McLean, agent for the Sea Island Company, LLC, on the applicant. Ms. Lee.
Thank you. This is Sea Island Team Member Housing Plan Development, and the request for this property, this is the property located along Sea Island Road, kind of across from the Harris Teeter shopping area, and they did receive a site plan approval back in January of 2023. They did receive it for an 84-unit multifamily development, and the goal is to house their team members, so employee workforce housing on the property. And so they did show that it was going to be meeting the 45-foot height limit that is indicated in the plan development text, and that there would be 4 floors in the building. The site plan was approved as that, and as you're aware, typically with site plan, we focus more on the horizontal development of the parcel. The elevations are conceptual elevations. So as the projects moved along, as they looked at what the plan development text allowed, there was a need to clarify whether 4 habitable floors would be allowed on the site, because as the property is in plan development, but there's also a provision in our zoning ordinance under section 502 that does state that on St. Simons Island, you can have 4 stories, but only 3 can be habitable. And a lot of cases where properties are in the floodplain, either elevating, the first floor might be parking or storage, but then they'll have 3 living levels above that. So this request is to amend their plan development text to specify that 4 habitable floors are allowed, so they can have 4 levels of living space on this property for this the housing development. And this is the amendment language that's in your packet. So survey of the property. And this was the approved site plan back in January. And these were the conceptual elevations that were in the site plan. And there were a number of public comments that the Planning Commission did receive. So we put them on the screen here. And so there were concerns about the proposed project. And here are your possible motions. And Mr. George from Hunter McLean is here representing the applicant this evening.
Can you go back to the picture, please? The building?
Stephanie, before we get going, I just want to clarify this request is specifically for the 4 habitable floors, is it not? 4 versus the 3 that's allowed in our zoning ordinance.
It is for 4 habitable stories.
Right.
So they can have a 4-story building. They can go to 45 feet outright, but it's to have 4 levels that are habitable.
Right,
correct?
and we do have an approved site plan, right?
Yes.
The work that's being done now, they have an LDA for that? They have a land disturbing activity
Yes, sir, they do.
for that, of the work that's being currently done?
Yes.
Correct. Anything else we want to cover? Just basic information. I think that's it.
Mr. Chair,
So,
may I?
yeah, sir.
Thank you. We're getting on to the point. I wanted to just clarify this project. Tonight's discussion is about that 4th floor of living. We had already approved this site plan. We had approved the 4th floor in January. I don't think we knew that there was an issue with the TDA text that prohibited the 4th floor living. But we, in a sense, have already gone along with that. It is within the allowable building height. So tonight, we're not here to approve or disapprove the project. And we received many emails to that effect, mostly against, some for, but that's not tonight's discussion. I just think we should put some boundaries around that and stay focused on what it is we're.
Right. And that was what I was trying to clarify.
I'm sorry if I cut you off.
No, but that's exactly right.
I was a little more direct.
Okay, so we have an approved site plan. They could continue on with their building. Obviously, the question about 4 versus 3 habitable floors is all we're here about tonight. Now, there may be other questions, and perhaps we can help answer some of the questions. But in terms of the project, as I understand it, they do have right of use to build 184 units. 84, excuse me, 84. Now, they might be able to build 184 too, I don't know. But the right of use for the project is proposed, they do that. Any other questions for staff at this point? Ask the applicant to come up and help us out a bit.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chris Jordan. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, the Sea Island Company. I'm going to be as brief as I can.
We can't hear you.
I agree, and the applicant agrees with everything that Mr. Duncan and the chair said about why we're here tonight, so I won't belabor that. But there are a few points I do want to mention just so that everybody has the appropriate context.
I can't hear you still.
Speak up.
The company is excited about this project, right?
Please.
The county's comprehensive plan identifies the absence of workforce housing. This is an issue in our community, it's an issue in a lot of other communities. In other communities, governments are spending public money to build workforce housing. We're not asking for money, we're doing this on our own. We're excited about this project. I think it's consistent with the aspirations of the comprehensive plan. We have an opportunity at this location, at Coquina Circle, to house a large number of employees right now who live a long way from their jobs, many of whom have transportation issues. We have an opportunity to put them close to their jobs. When they live at Coquina, there's already an employee parking lot that they can utilize. There's a shuttle employee service that's right there on the line. We believe this will make it much easier for us to attract the kind of employees that Sea Island needs. But we also believe the county will benefit. Traffic. Our employees have to live somewhere. The Sea Island Company has 2,100 employees. Experience tells us that if they're not living at Coquina, many of them are going to live throughout the mainland. And if they're on the mainland, they're going to join the same commute that many other folks have to take every day back and forth across the causeway. But if a large number of them wake up at Coquina Circle and take a short shuttle ride to their jobs on Sea Island and back, that's a large number of employees who don't have to be a part of that commute every day. There's a similar point to be made with housing. If these folks are living at Coquina Circle, that's a large number of employees who aren't part of the great demand for limited housing, both on the island and throughout the county. So we believe this project is smart development. It allows us at our own expense to house a large number of employees close to their jobs while at the same time protecting important community interests. The reason we're here tonight is in fact limited. The amendment that we have drafted is narrow. It asks to clarify what arguably is uncertainty between what the Old Stables PD says, which is nothing about any limitation of habitable floors, versus what the zoning ordinance says. We think the most efficient way for everybody to proceed with clarity is to amend the Old Stables PD text to say that this property, the Coquina Circle, is not subject to the 3 habitable floor limitation in the zoning ordinance, and that instead, this property, Coquina Circle, can have 4 habitable floors. So, I know we're about to hear from a lot of other folks. and that's totally appropriate. But we would ask that the commission bear in mind sort of two things as we hear it from other folks. The first is what you're hearing related at all to whether employees should be able to live on the fourth floor? And the second is this big picture about workforce housing. Right? This is a unique opportunity for something we talk a lot about in this town, a unique opportunity for a large employer to house a lot of its employees very close to their jobs in a way that's not going to cost the county anything and is going to be protective of two other things we talk a lot about, which is traffic problems and housing. We'll try to answer any questions you have. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Jordan, I've got, well, first let me ask the commission, do you have any questions for Mr. Jordan? What, listen to the online chatter and the social media and all of that. Is there any guarantee that this is workforce housing?
Well, I can certainly say that that is the intent to house.
Please, folks.
Great.
In terms of, I don't have the authority to encumber this property, if that's the question. I can't make any promises in that respect.
Right, but
I know that
the makeup of the unit, the kind of unit that it's, can someone tell us a little bit about how the unit's configured?
Yes, sir. So these are, I appreciate it. These are 84 units. Some of them will be 3 or 4 bedroom, depending on the interior walls. I think you could have at most 315 beds. They're meant for employees. There could be some families that come with the employees that live there, but they don't need more hotels. Right? They need employees to work in the existing amenities that they have. And the entire goal here is to bring them closer to their jobs, because it has traditionally been a great challenge trying to find workers that they can find a way to get to and back from where they live throughout the county and outside of the county.
So these units, do you anticipate that these are roommate situations where you have unrelated people that are living in the same unit, so to speak?
The answer is yes, we don't anticipate that.
That's sort of like a college dormitory, perhaps?
That's right, and again, experience tells us a lot of these folks won't have vehicles, right? So that there will be roommates that will be there. When they're back from work, they can walk to a grocery store or a pharmacy or support any other local businesses that are right there.
Okay, and then another question I have is obviously there's plenty of ground there. I mean, the building could be spread out. What's the pros and cons for 3 habitable floors versus 4?
It's a great question. The reason we need 4 habitable floors is because it allows us to do what we want to do with the remaining surface area outside of the building footprint, which is a bang-up job with landscaping and trees. Right? If you have visited the sites of any of the other CI developments, I hope everyone would agree, they take landscaping extremely seriously. And this project is no different. They want to make it look great. And we think we can, within the current footprint, provided we can house some of our employees on the 4th floor. If we can't, we still have to house them, and we still can, respectfully. We just have to build out and not up. And if we build out, nobody wins, right? It doesn't look as good. There's less trees. It's not a density thing. It's the same number of units. It just doesn't look as good. It's not aesthetically what we're aiming for. And so in that way, we think having employees on this 4th floor is the most efficient tool for housing them. And it allows us to do what we want to do, which is the most fulsome and robust landscaping that we can put there.
Right, so the pros are obviously we're covering up less ground by going up rather than out.
Yes, sir. Going out means more asphalt and less trees. And we don't want that. We want
More site coverage.
Yes,
Right,
that's right.
more site coverage. Has there been any thought as to what that site coverage would look like? Is there any guarantee that we're going to have landscaping and not cover it up later with even more units?
I know I can say that there is no contemplation of building anything other than what we're building inside the circle right now. And if that ever changed, and that is not on anybody's radar right now, right? What we want is this building and good landscaping around it. We think that's what we need. I would also say, if that ever changed, I think we would have to come back here. And if a future commission disagreed, we wouldn't be able to do
Well,
it.
you would have to come back for site plan approval, provided that this goes forward. You could come back for a site plan that would contemplate more more units, additional units, I suppose. Any other questions for Mr. Jordan at this point?
Mr. Chair, if I may, we spoke in January about the parking impact, and I think it's the intent to use the existing employee parking, which a couple hundred yards away. If there was some change in use in the future, is this parcel tied to the parking parcel in terms of a tax parcel?
I thought we were just talking about the fourth floor.
Excuse me.
We are, I think we're trying to justify the fourth floor. Mr. Kilgore.
That's right, but,
Mr. Duncan, I just want to make sure I understand your question.
right, so the parking to be used,
Yes, sir.
you say they're not going to have wheels. I think some of these folks will have wheels, and that's okay. But if the use of the building did change, and you said it could not be encumbered, so if it did, the question's going to come up about parking. We talked about that in January. Could you just address that?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that this time, but I've got some folks here with me, and I'm happy to report back shortly if that works.
Well, it's just, because I know this is one of the angst that people have. And finally, are we going to hear, I don't know if there's anyone here from the school that's in the circle. We spoke in January about the school. If anyone has a right or a concern, it would be that school. If I was a parent, then I want to be sure the school's concerns are addressed. And I spoke to a representative on Friday about this very issue, and it's my understanding the school is happy.
No, they're not.
Is that correct?
No. No.
Do I need to speak now, or should I
Well,
speak in
you're
public?
going to have time, so let's just park that question. I want to be sure that is addressed. Okay.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from
Yeah, I do.
Commissioner?
Do y'all happen to have anything that kind of shows the building in place, maybe how it'll be seen from Sea Island Road, so we can kind of see what the visual impact might be?
I do have some drawings that I can pass out. I don't want to, it's going to take me a moment. I don't want to waste everyone's time. But,
Sir?
Can't hear you. What do you say?
So he asked for drawings of what it looks like from Sea Island Road. The building's really located back off Sea Island Road quite a bit. And this, the little render, you kind of leads you to believe it's sitting right on the road.
I appreciate you clarifying that. But this is not meant to represent what it would look like.
Right. This is just a 3D representation of what the overall building is. Right, okay. So there's quite a bit of difference between Takina Drive and actual Sea Island Road. Right.
Yeah, you'd only be able to see the center section with the at most.
I think what this hopefully can demonstrate is what we have in mind.
If I could interrupt, we've got the site plan here that shows Sea Island Road. If you, right there, you see Sea Island Road, and then the Coquina Circle, how far it is back. You can kind of see the development there, how far it's going to be back from the road.
Where's the school on the map?
Up there, behind it?
Right where?
See where this kayak is? Way,
Well, the school for us.
way up there?
Isn't that the school up here?
No.
No.
To the right.
The school's right above the word with Coquina Circle. Right above the words.
The school is basically where that grid is.
Yes.
Right above there.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Jordan? Okay. I'm sure we'll ask you to come back up, so stand by.
Y'all, I'm coming not against, but you specifically asked for the school to speak, so I'm speaking on behalf of our kind of unique.
Okay, state your name.
My name is Taylor Haley. I'm an attorney for St. Simon's Christian School. Mr. Duncan, I'm not sure exactly who you spoke to. I won't say that the school is happy. I won't say that the school is unhappy. This is what it is. We were trying to collaborate as neighbors. We were in a PD text. For those of you who have lived here for a long time, you know, this is one of those PD texts that was done when the old Sea Island Company owned all of the property involved. And that is not the reality anymore. St. Thomas Christian School owns part, you know, all the retail and the restaurant, CVS and all of that, down to Cilantro's, Dorothy's, that's all part of this PD text. So it's not the same reality that it was when it was initially done. When we came in January, the school was somewhat caught off guard by the project, but we came in good faith, and we did. We met with Sea Island Acquisition about this project after the hearing, and we had very fruitful conversations about ways that we can collaborate with the school's future plans, with their future plans. And I think that both parties have been working in good faith to be good neighbors. But at the same time, it's not that we love it. I mean, it has been clear cut. And so our happy little spot back there where we were tucked in, we have 193 students, pre-K through 8th grade, and they were very tucked in and secluded, and it was wonderful. And now that's not the reality, but the site plan was, they were seeking to do something that the PD text had already given them the right to do. And as someone who has represented zoning applicants for decades in my own practice, that there's a big difference in that. The school now feels that the rezoning is a clarification of something they did not already have the right to do. And I'm trying to be diplomatic because, like I said, the school wants to be a good neighbor here. But we don't love that there's 4 habitable floors looking down on our school. So I can't say we're happy, but we are trying to be a good neighbor and collaborate. But it makes it harder for them to buffer and for the security concerns because you have people at 45 feet high looking down on our playground and everywhere where we are and hanging out on balconies and doing what roommates do. I don't know, you know, one can. So I'm not here speaking in favor of it. I'm not here speaking against it, but the school is a very interested party and we are watching it closely and we want to make sure that this commission does its job. And we also don't want the commission or the project to get tied up in something that is not going to benefit anyone and have it just be a perpetual construction site because, you know, missteps were made at the approval level. So we're watching it closely. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. I have
I just want to clarify, and I totally get where you're coming from in the school, but we're not, right now, they can build to 45 feet. And they can put a habitable floor at 45 feet and then have parking underneath. So we're not discussing raising the building with this variance, just to clarify. Yeah. So none of that would change.
No, I understand, but I also know that the way that they have options, and that's one of the blessings and the curse of kind of this PD text and the project is there are things they're seeking, but it's a conceptual thing and it could be something different. You know, it's not locked in. So that's part of why we're watching it closely.
Thank you.
Just remind everybody, we've got five minutes for each person. I know there's a lot of people here that would like to speak this evening, so let's be mindful of our time. We could make it as brief as possible. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
I'm Janine Brooks, y'all hear me all right? And I represent Edwards Plaza. I don't know how many of y'all know, but Sea Island goes on the property adjacent to us where they do house employees. I can attest to, yes, they will use commerce and be on foot and travel. They'll travel back and forth on Sea Island, you know, vehicles. They do the same thing coming in at Edwards Plaza. You know, they do somehow have personal vehicles. And I see a lot of people, I see a lot of foot traffic. You know, they'll walk up to the Natural Food Market. I mean, they'll walk all the way to Winn-Dixie and then come back. But the another things I'd like to mention though is that they need to take a look at the backside of that property as how they maintain it. And I have been asking for probably close to 2 years now for a stop sign to be put back up at that corner, and it still has to be put back up. And that's a three-way intersection, there's be three-way stop signs. And, yeah, and there's one been down, and it's their stop sign, but they won't put it back up. And that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak for this project?
No.
Anyone? All right, all those who would like to speak in opposition?
My name's Jeff Kilgore. And, let me get this come to work. Come on. I'm going to follow Mr. Duncan's precedents and suggest that this project, when it was approved, did not have adequate parking, and it does not today. I also spoke about the drainage and stormwater, and this application was not complete. Your ordinance 619 used to say that the applications had to be complete and in compliance with all county ordinances when submitted. Somehow that's been changed. But this project did not have the adequate documentation on the zoning. And I spoke about the Georgia Stormwater Manual, and you ignored that, and you voted to approve this application, notwithstanding the fact that it did not comply with your ordinances. Now, Mr. Nash said that the residents on the 4th floor won't be a change. Of course it will. That's why we're here, because it's not allowed. And the application is to change and to allow it. And section 502 says, of your ordinance, inasmuch as St. Simon's Island is designated as an area of scenic beauty and historic interest, no building on St. Simon's Island shall be erected, altered, or moved so as to exceed 45 feet in height, nor shall such building include more than 4 stories. On St. Simon's Island, no more than 3 of the stories shall be habitable. Now that's pretty explicit. And this is your ordinance. You don't have the authority to approve this application. The only body that can alter the ordinances is the Board of Commissioners. And they have not changed section 502. And so, because this violates your own law, you're prohibited from approving this application.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I just got a text that says that.
Yeah, so we'll work on that. RT representative just stepped out. We'll he's back in. We'll work on that.
Oh, wow.
Yes, ma'am, please state your name.
Good evening, I'm Teresa Baton. I live on St. Simon's Island with my husband and our 3 children, 2 of whom are elementary students at St. Simon's Christian School. While I am an attorney, I'm not here in a representative capacity this evening. I have, however, spoken to quite an awful lot of parents at the school, and I can say that none of the families I've spoken with about anything about this project are excited about this project. I want to clarify that this project is not multifamily housing in the common use of the word. It is high-density, subsidized housing being put almost adjacent to our school and towering over our school. Our school has about 193 students and is growing. I have a few concerns I want to hit tonight. First, how this rezoning request may affect density. Second, why this rezoning request should be denied. And third, the parents' concerns about density and why this matters to us. First, regarding how this rezoning request affects density, which is my chief concern here tonight. The rezoning application at page 2 states that using 4 habitable floors will reduce site coverage to attain the same number of occupancy. And that if the applicant can have only 3 floors, it will increase the footprint and number of buildings necessary. Yet, if you flip to the end of the rezoning application packet, which is also the site plan that you approved in January, this is where the applicant already contemplated having 4 floors, as you've stated this evening, and it spans almost the entire footprint of this 2+ acres. So I don't know where those additional buildings would go, but I do believe that they would have to come back to this commission and receive approval for a new site plan to put additional buildings on this parcel. Second, this rezoning request should be denied because, as the previous speaker stated, the language of the Glynn County zoning ordinance controls here. It does not permit a habitable 4th floor on St. Simon's Island. This PD text includes a 45-foot limit and is completely silent on the number of floors. Why is it silent? The zoning ordinance was already carefully drafted and addressed that issue. You can choose to put other language in your PD text, and this particular PD text has been amended at least 3 times. Section 502 of the zoning ordinance addresses heights of building on St. Simon's Island and designates St. Simon's Island a, quote, area of scenic beauty and historic interest, and therefore does not allow the 4th floor to be habitable. This applies to everyone. Moreover, section 723.5 of our zoning ordinance provides, unless otherwise stated in the development text, the general provision set forth in Article 6 shall govern unless relief is granted by the County Commission. What does Article 6 say? Well, in section 617, which is entitled Exceptions to Height Limits, it has absolutely nothing to do with a building like this. It's about chimneys, spires, belfries, the like. It doesn't apply here. This commission is not technically authorized to interpret a plain and unambiguous PD text. And here, this language could not be more plain and unambiguous. There's no need for quote-unquote clarification here. This question is already answered by the zoning ordinance. So what the applicant wants is an exception to be made for them, or as we also call it, a variance. But no compelling reason for a variance has been given. The only reason for this variance that's been offered by the applicant is that workforce housing is good. I do not disagree. But the thrust of this whole rezoning application packet is more, you should be thanking us for building our own workforce housing instead of asking you to subsidize it with your tax dollars. It doesn't matter that the site plan in January that was approved referred to the 4 stories. Section 619.7 of the zoning ordinance contemplates that when an application for site plan approval is filed in conjunction with an application for rezoning, this commission would first have to decide on whether to recommend denial or approval of the rezoning application and then transmit that for decision to the County Board of Commissioners. I question why that wasn't done here in January, but of course that was up to the applicant. I don't know if it was intentional or an oversight. Of course, what it would have meant is that this whole entire issue and this entire project would have first had to have gone to the County Commission in January rather than be approved in January here, which of course, as a practical matter, has meant that all of the trees on this property are already gone and construction is set to begin. Finally, and most importantly to me as a parent, are our concerns about density. We're concerned with the safety of our children. These are children, almost 200 children ages 4 through about 13. The applicant stated there are going to be up to 315 beds in this building. We're concerned about increased adult stranger presence.
1 minute.
Thank you. We're concerned about increased adult stranger presence. We're concerned about sex offenders. We're concerned about background checks and registration of sex offenders or other criminal offenders, both domestic and internationally. We're concerned about people changing their clothes with the blinds open as they look over our playground and our soccer field. We're concerned with people up 3 or 4 floors who can view our children all day long on the playground and soccer field. An additional habitable floor means it's more difficult to have a more meaningful buffer if there are people residing on that floor who can look down. We're concerned about alcohol and drug use. We have all, at various times, smelled marijuana emanating around the guest cottages on Frederica Road. I don't intend to smell that when I'm dropping off and picking up my children from school.
Ma'am, wrap it up, please.
Thank you, I sure will, on my very last points. We're concerned about all of these things. We're concerned about pedestrian safety. We're concerned about parking, which is not enough. We're concerned about the DoorDash and Lyft and Uber drivers who be coming and parking at our school. And we are concerned about the residents there who really don't have access to usable and affordable shopping and dining. So we thank you. We hope you'll consider the precedent a decision like this would set. And we hope you'll consider neighbors, in particular the children. And I thank you very much for your time.
Sorry to stop that. The only thing I didn't hear is this going to be guaranteed housing for those people only? Because it's a slippery slope, not just the building height, but the whole concept of it. If we can open this up and rent it, what happens if there's another downturn and they can't rent this to Sea Island kids? And again, the traffic. Please, you have to time yourself to go anywhere from the village to that end, period. Nobody can deny that. The traffic, they're not going to walk everywhere. That is an impossibility, physically and any other way. So unless you can provide studies and other things that tell us it's not going to happen, then it's sort of like a puff of smoke and you're just hoping that it doesn't get any worse. The slippery slope is the key word. How many more of these edifices are you going to allow because this got presented and passed?
Mary Lancaster, I live on St. Simon's Island. Let's bring this back around to the only issue we're here for tonight. On St. Simon's Island, no more than 3 of the stories shall be habitable. The clear and mandatory language of Section 502 is absolute. It makes no exceptions for buildings constructed in a planned development. It provides for no method of deviating from the limitation of 3 habitable stories. This site plan should never have been approved. I don't know who messed up, but that's why we're here tonight. No matter what zoning is applied to a property, the legal limit under Section 502 is 3 habitable stories. From Gascoigne to East Beach to Sea Palms West, in resort residential and in planned development, every development since November of 2005 has been held to the legal limit that is specified in the zoning ordinance. I live in a property that is zoned PD in Sea Palms West. It's a 4-story building. It has 3 habitable stories. The villas at Gascoigne were built in the resort residential zoning classification and have 3 habitable stories. No developer has ever questioned the validity of the limits of Section 502. The applicant's PD was adopted on March 5th, 2009, and has been amended multiple times since that date. The limitations of Section 502 has been in effect at all times during the development of the applicant's PD. The applicant had notice of this well-established limitation before planning this project. The PD text says nothing about habitable floors because Section 502 controls. This attempt to circumvent this is not an appropriate use of the rezoning process. This body does not have the authority to recommend the violation of Section 502, nor does the Board of Commissioners have the power to allow it by amending the PD text. For that reason, your recommendation should be denial. This request should also be denied on its merits. A 4-story dormitory building with 4 habitable stories is not appropriate for this community. In a project that already has negative impacts for the adjacent school and the established Glen Haven neighborhood, let's dump on Glen Haven some more. 4 habitable stories will add 25% more density to this project. The legal limit is 3 stories, period. The applicant needs to live within the restrictions contained in the zoning ordinance. It's legally wrong to use a PD text amendment to violate the legal limit imposed by Section 502, and this is a slippery slope. You know what this will cause? A proliferation of PDs that says, well, I don't like this rule, I don't like that rule, I'm going to change it in my planned development text. It's also ethically wrong to erase the legal limit that was enacted to protect adjoining property owners and the character of our island. The applicant's requesting exactly what Section 502 was enacted to prevent, a maximum height with 4 habitable stories. It's just wrong. Please recommend denial of this rezoning.
I have a store on Market Street, Ronnie's on Market Street, and I'm curious how much that units are going to cost each month, the person staying there. And how big is the unit? So what is their rent? How much are they making? Because my rent is really high on Market Street. So I want to know how much Ann Schultz is charging the people that live there, that work there. Thank you.
Please state your name, Jane.
Jane Fraser. Because stormwater and flooding issues have not been resolved, as we've already said in January, you are jeopardizing employees' safety and property by putting a high-density building in a flood hazard area. Excess stormwater generated from the proposed housing would fill the drainage culverts. Once those culverts are full, they act as a choke point for water coming from homes, schools, and other upstream areas, such as Market Street, Taylor House, CVS, the slope coming down towards Coquina Circle, which always acted as the wetlands to absorb that water, is no longer there. The wetlands there, but the trees aren't. Once those culverts are full, they serve as a choke point. The more people you put in this building, the more they are in harm's way. And now we know that the children too will be more in harm's way because of the flooding, because of the choke point. This is a highly dangerous flood area. AE, for those of you who are engineers here, flooding area AZ. So of course I urge you to deny this. Thank you.
Nancy Thomas, and I live on St. Simon's. One thing, and the man...
Please state your name.
What?
State your name.
Nancy Thomas. Okay. The gentleman at the end brought up parking. And I don't think there has been an answer to that yet. I drove around the Sion's parking lot once yesterday around 6 at night. It was about half full. I drove around today around 2 in the afternoon, and it was 3/4 full. And I didn't count every space, but it appeared to be maybe 250, 300 max spaces. They're claiming that they can park their 84 vehicles that might be, occupants of this building in that parking lot. I don't think so. I don't know if any of you have gone and looked, but you should. And I hope you just say no tonight.
Thank you. Hearing none, we'll close public hearing. All right, Commissioner, I've got a question for our attorney. Do we have the authority to amend this PD to include the 4th floor?
Yes, sir. So the section 723 of the zoning ordinance created the PD process, which is an avenue for property owners to come in and kind of create their own zoning ordinance for the piece of property. And then our ordinance is explicit. That's one of the reasons why you have to go through the rezoning process, excuse me, to amend the PD text. It's considered the zoning ordinance for that property. One of the purposes of the PD district is to create variations from the standards of the zoning ordinance. It's commonplace. As a matter of fact, this, excuse me, this PD text right now has a section that talks about the variations from the normal standards of the zoning ordinance. It mentions section 503, it mentions section 607, 609, and says those regular rules don't apply. We've addressed those here in the PD text, and this alternate rule is going to apply. So this amendment would be an addition to those exceptions that are already written into the PD text. That's commonplace. I think most PD texts do that. They say the zoning ordinance will apply as it is now with these following exceptions, and they write their own rules. So that's contemplated by our ordinance. Y'all are just making a recommendation tonight. It is, goes to the Board of Commissioners for final approval, but yes, you do have the authority under our ordinances to consider and make a recommendation on this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, could you just verify we have no fourth floor dwellings on the island?
I think actually we've got several 5-story buildings on St. Simon's with 4 habitable floors. Most of those in the resort residential district, I believe.
Right.
I believe North Breakers, the Beach Club. Keegan Prince has got 4 habitable floors without a garage.
All built before 2009.
That's why they need. Please, no public hearings, folks. We're having discussion.
So, thank you. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And also, we need to emphasize our commission only makes recommendations. To the gentleman's point, we don't approve anything. We recommend to the elected officials, our board of commissioners. But I just want to go revisit this school issue. In January, I put it out there. I said we need to hear from the school. And tonight we've heard, I think, kind of 2 different views. And I'm just sorry that level of representation was not here for the site plan discussion. Okay? So I appreciate your comments, Miss. I had made it very obvious we needed to hear from the school now.
It was not made obvious to the parents.
Yeah, okay, that's not our issue, but she made some okay points. And I don't know where this is going tonight. Sounds like the school and the Sea Island Company need to have more discussions.
I think another point that needs to be clarified too is 4 stories are allowed. It's the 4th habitable floor that we're discussing tonight. So I mean, like, when we discussed having 3 floors plus a garage, that would be okay.
The 4th floor in this building can be habitable.
Right. Yeah. So 4th floor can be habitable.
A total of 4.
Right.
Floors without a variance.
Yeah. So that's out there as well.
The height of the building would not change.
Right. I'll tell you what, at this point, let's ask the applicant if you'd like to make a rebuttal on any of these issues. And then we'll circle back around.
Before you make that, can I just get clarification from staff that we discussed back when we approved this before? I know there've been several comments about what happens if they change the use of this building. This is not, the current use is not restricted to employee housing.
That is correct, yeah.
So that was an issue, so it's not, we weren't deciding whether this could be used for this or that. That's what it's zoned for.
Right, yeah, the zoning is multifamily housing, so it would not be restricted to the type of tenant or, and to my understanding, they're not proposing any kind of a deed restriction that would restrict it to employees.
And one more clarification as well. Parking requirements per the PD text. What's actually required per the PD text?
Yeah, I can pull that up real quick. So the number of parking spaces, multifamily is 2 spaces per dwelling unit. And I know there was a question earlier about whether the adjacent employee kind of parking facility and lot is tied to this. And there were some of their parking requirements were being met by utilizing that employee parking because it was employees living in the site as well as even parking
Right,
vehicles.
So when we approved the site plan, that parking was part of this project.
It is to an extent, yeah. I mean, there's definitely more parking spaces on the employee lot, but some of those.
But they met the parking requirements based on that parking.
That is correct, yes.
If nobody else parks, then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly, and I apologize for jumping around. Mr. Duncan, you asked me, just while we're on the issue of parking, what happens if there's further development in the split? And the PD text provides, I hope I'm answering this, section 611.4, that for landowners of common parking areas designated for joint utilization, the county shall require written documentation of cross easements or other legally binding documents. So I think what that means is, with that proper documentation, the owners of different parcels can continue to coordinate. I think it's an important point. It just bears repeating that we can have people live on the 4th floor. It's whether we can have people living on all 4 floors. We are sensitive to the concerns of the school. We want to be a good neighbor. I think it's always valuable to sit down and talk, and we'll continue to do that, certainly. The landscaping that we have in mind envisions a tree canopy, right? And that tree canopy will be pretty tall, and it may well, the hope, the plan is that will be a pretty sufficient buffer between our building and the school. Related to the issue of parking, there are folks that park there now, right? Again, we have currently 2,100 employees. We're going to continue to have around 2,100 employees, right? A lot of the people that are parking there now are coming from the mainland, right? And they wouldn't be doing that, as we get into this plan of having folks live at Coquina, they'll be there. They won't have to come from the mainland. So it's not like we're just going to add a ton of new parking to what's already there. A lot of it will be replacement. Again, I think we know this issue has generated a lot of comments, but as IP said at the very outset, the issue tonight is limited. I think we've drafted a narrow amendment. I certainly agree with everything about what the IP's authority here is to recommend, and we would appeal to that authority and ask that this narrow amendment to the PD text provide that for this property in this instance, for the reasons that we previously stated, we do believe this is a unique chance for meaningful workforce housing for one of our area's large employers in a way that will also be protective of cars on the road and people looking for housing. So for those reasons, we would ask for support to recommend the PD text be amended to provide that at Coquina Circle there can be 4 habitable floors. Thank you.
Any further questions from Mr. Jordan while he's standing up there? Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you.
Chairman Gass, staff questions? Will, do you know 502B is what specifies that no more 3 stories may be habitable? Do you know when that was enacted? I mean, I see some change dates back here, but I'm not sure what was changed.
I don't know when it was originally enacted. The notations there indicate that it was amended back in September of '03. I went back and looked at that amendment, and apparently that was to drop the habitable story restriction. It looks like it was implemented back perhaps in 2005, but when it was originally adopted, I was
on the board then, but I can't tell you the date.
I'm just asking because one of the 5-story building with 4 habitable floors, Ocean Lodge, was built in '07. So it was built when this was in action. Just as reference.
Just want to comment on the trees. I rode around the job site earlier today, and I saw the big mud field, and I had ridden around it in January before we held the original site plan approval. And admittedly, it was thick forested property, but I will say this, mostly yellow leaf pine trees, okay, long leaf pines. And there are still 4 pine trees there today, and I suspect those are coming down. But if this was any other company but Sea Island Company, I'd be concerned. I've yet to see a shoddy development project by them. If you know of one, I'd be happy to hear about it after the hearing, but.
Why don't they put it on Sea Island?
I am sure they're going to replant with some nice big trees as they've done, and palm trees as they've done with all of their properties. So
Addition to Sea Island.
excuse me, yes. Please. So, as I said, if it was any other developer, but Sea Island Company, I'd be a little concerned. I'm pretty confident that they'll do a great job.
Yeah, they get a pass.
So let me ask you this. Does the PD text have a site coverage amount in it? What's the site coverage limit?
On the site plan, excuse me, it says 60% is the max, and based on these plans, they're at 50 some odd percent on the next plan sheet there, or what I'm looking at right now. So we're just about maxed out per this design, or it meets the standards. So that's the what's written on this site plan in January.
Right, the entire holdings of Sea Island Company encompasses more than just Coquina Drive. I assume that there's additional properties that are associated with the property owner.
Yes, with the property owner, but this parcel is just Coquina. Let me see if I can.
Is it a separate entity? I guess is what I'm asking maybe.
Yeah, so this parcel, it's Coquina Circle, and does come down to Sea Island Road. The parcel, to the left on the screen is the employee parking lot. And I think those are the only 2 Sea Island parcels, so they can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Right, and I guess the site coverage calculation does, for the green strip there, is that the road or the buffer? The green strip at the bottom of this going across the page, is that a buffer?
Where you can see kind of an aerial overview, that is Sea Island Road.
Okay, I have difficulty.
Yeah, above the road and the bottom left of the parcel.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's
Oh, I'm
tree.
sorry.
Yeah, I was just looking at the screen, I couldn't read it. But yes, that's.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, because the zoning layer is that kind of brown color that goes over. But yeah, that is the tree buffer between Sea Island Road and Coquina Circle.
The total site area on here is 25 acres, and the allowable for impervious area is 15 acres. And like I said, they meet that threshold on these calculations.
That's a little, I mean, most commercial strips like that have, in fact, I think most of them currently have no site coverage standards at all on St. Simons. And so this is 60%, which is pretty good. And that allows a fair amount of landscape and so forth. And you say this is currently about 58, 56, something like that?
Basically what they're providing is around 13.4 acres based on this initial plan, and the allowable was 15, so they're another acre or so below that threshold of what they're allowable. So 13 acres versus 15 acres, so that's what they're presenting.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, engineer. If we were to not approve this, they could turn the lower level, the first floor, into a parking garage. and have the 3 habitable floors, but that would free up parking on the space as it is. So they could expand the building to still achieve the number of occupants. They'd just be relocating some of the parking to the first floor.
Yeah, that could be one design option, is to have parking on the ground floor or more storage for the tenants.
What's the elevation there on the site? The first floor?
Engineers.
Well, then 14 foot 6 inches is the Southern Building Code. Is that right? For the first level.
No, not necessarily.
Above sea level.
No. It's probably 10, 9 or 10 at that point. Any
Oh, the other.
We do have we've got the authority to make a decision, or make a recommendation. And that'll go forward one way or another. Even if we disapprove it, it could go to the Board of Commissioners and they could approve it. If we approve it, it could go to the Board of Commissioners and they could say no. So,
No.
If the intent is to limit the number of occupants, we're not limiting them.
right.
Either way we go, we're not limiting the number of occupants.
No. In fact, they could build on the site somewhere else, not the additional units. And I will say this about workforce housing. I was on the committee to review the comprehensive plan update. And one of the first things we talked about was demographics in Wayne County. And the biggest deficit we have was workforce housing, the lack of. And especially for younger people moving in, trying to find a place to live. That not only affects the workers, but obviously the businesses. If they can't find a place for the workers to live, then they can't attract the workers. So it's a benefit to the entire community to have workforce housing. Now the question before us tonight is whether or not this building, which it could look just like that right now with three floors, could be just as high. They could spread it out and get the same number of units on site somewhere else. So we aren't doing anything by saying no.
Say no.
Please. My point is they could still build the 84 units. They could still do it.
And so could everybody else. Yeah.
If they're so upstanding, why won't they go by our ordinances?
Yeah. Yes.
Follow the zoning. That's all they got to do.
Let's do that. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Please make a motion.
Yes, sir. I'd like to recommend approval of the proposed zoning decision.
You're young. You don't know any better.
Please, we have a motion. We have a second.
You're setting the precedent.
Any discussion on the motion?
You're an idiot.
Yeah, Robert, I decided to say to the comment we just heard that I think precedent's already been set. We've got 4-story buildings on St. Simon's.
Come on.
That's not true. We have 4-story buildings on St. Simon's with 4 habitable floors. We asked staff, they gave us a list of them. They exist on St. Simon's.
And California.
Most recent was built in 2007. It's on the beach. Before what?
Cat pending promised us.
It's in place when that building was built.
If you're not gonna go by.
Cat pending promised us.
Please. Let's keep this a little organized anyway.
Shame on you.
All right, Michael, you finished with your comments?
Yeah, just recommend approval of the proposed zoning decision as presented.
Okay.
Good job.
We got a motion and a second. Joe, could you any further discussion? Again, I'm sympathetic to the project, mostly because of my recent experience with the comprehensive plan. It's pointed out by our consultants that we've got a big deficit in this county. This solves that. One of the things that the county commission's interested in is how we entice developers to build workforce housing.
There's more of us than you.
Come on,
Let us vote.
don't sell our island out.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Let us vote.
Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion? Vote. Patrick, you have something to say?
Well, I just want to reemphasize, and I'm glad Commissioner Nash raised the issue. The fourth floor habitation is not prohibited. So they can habitate floors 4, 3, and 2. Okay?
All
It
right.
does not change the height. Still going to be very high. If
Right.
that's a bothersome.
That's fine.
Go ahead and approve that.
Right.
So
Yes.
Approve that.
Do that, yeah.
just indulge the commission, please. So, you know, I just feel like they have other alternatives, which I don't think are as appealing to the site.
Move it to their island
I
then.
think the site would be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse.
We spread it out.
spread it
All right,
out.
with that, we'll call the question. All in favor?
You can't call the question. It's against the rules.
Call the question, Mr. Chair.
Ordinances don't matter.
You gotta make a motion, it has to be a second, it has to be voted.
He did make a motion.
No,
One second.
I'm talking about calling a question.
Call for the vote.
You can't call the question. There has to be a motion, it has to be seconded, it has to be voted on, it requires 2/3 majority.
That's right.
And if a kid gets hurt, it's your fault.
Yep.
It's your fault.
Yeah,
And
it's
if
on
my
your
store gets
side.
robbed, it's your
We'll ask
fault.
for a vote on the motion. Please, all those in
Your
favor?
fault.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you.